Okay guys, I'm back with another update on the Thunderbird 2 build. Now, we've got the wiring finally finished for the jet exhaust. We've installed our wiring, we did our soldering at the end there and put a little heat shrink tubing on there. And now, once we hit the switch, boom, we have our jet exhaust flickering there, giving us our simulated takeoff. And all four of the lights are running through this one line here, coming out of the same space, at the same hole that the leg goes into, so that we'll be able to hide that wire behind the leg in the plume of smoke that's going to be covering up the four legs here to give us a look of a jet exhaust. Now what we have to do is we have to run the wiring in that's going to power all of the lights that are in the nose and for the nuclear reactor. Now the nuclear reactor has two lights in it now. I opened it up and added another bulb because I just wanted it to be a little bit brighter. So that's got a much better glow to it than it did before. Still not bright enough to really stand out in the daylight, but in the dim light it's going to look really cool. So now I'm going to get set to try and run the next set of power lines in through here. Hopefully I can fit it in through here without having to drill or change anything new else. And then we'll have our leads going in to power the second circuit, which is going to run all the remaining lights, as the flickering lights are on their own separate, are on one circuit, and there's going to be another one to power the other lights. I hope I made that clear. Alright guys, so I'm going to get started on that. So hang out while I do a little bit of wiring. wiring soldered together. Now let's just make sure that it actually lights up, because that would be a plus. Alright, so we know the other one lights up, so let's just get this set up. These wires are almost as thick as a human hair, the ones that were coming off of those little LEDs, which make them quite a bit more difficult to deal with. Now the wires from the Evans Design lights, which are a slightly thicker gauge, are much easier to work with. So I am very happy with the Evans Design kits. But you know what they say, you get what you pay for. I bought these other LEDs off of eBay, not eBay, Amazon, a while back. Looking for a quick and easy solution to my LED problem, and it came up on Amazon, so I ordered a bunch. Got a bunch for next to nothing, but quality wise, I have to say that the Evans Design lights are definitely ahead of these. Okay, now did I wire up the correct? And there we go. We have all of our lights on. Let's shut off the other lights here, so we can make sure that everything's working. And yes, it is. As you can see, we have all of our interior lights lit, and our nuclear reactor. That one's a little bit, well, it might have more to do with my connection here. Let's see why the nuclear reactor went out. Oh, they all went out. Oh, that's because I lost my... There we go. So we have a successful test of all of our LEDs. So now we'll put a little shrink wrap on there. Then we got to make sure all the wiring fits inside the ship. And we are done with our wiring of the ship itself. Now, the Evans Design Kit also, he also offers the shrink wrap that I showed you guys earlier. I found that this is fantastic, really good quality shrink wrap. It works very, very well. I mean, you're saying to yourself, yeah, well, you know, it's shrink wrap. How hard could it be? Well, there's good shrink wrap, and then there's cheap shrink wrap. Cheap shrink wrap. And from what I can tell, this is a pretty good quality shrink wrap. Alright, so now we're going to cover this up, prevent any shorts. I'm taking you guys through the whole process here of finalizing our build, our electrical part of the build here in the ship. Now, I am still going to add I use my trusty torch here for the shrink wrap. Once I get some heat going, there we go. You want to apply your heat evenly. You do not want to let it sit in one place too long. Especially as thin as these wires are, you do not want to take the chance on melting one of them. Or the project you're working on. So you really got to be careful. This is my first time wiring up a kit like this, but I have done extensive electrical work in my profession, so I am quite used to wiring repairs. But on this small of a scale, it's a little different. Okay, guys, and that is it. We're done. One final test of the lights. Just to make sure that everything's on, and it is, as you can see. So we are good to go. The next step will be sealing up the ship. And okay, guys, now we have the body sitting, the upper and lower parts of the chest of the body attached together. Just holding them on by tape right now, as I'm trying to give the wires a nice little memory of where they're going to lay, because when it comes time to glue the body together, I'm going to have to make sure that they don't stick out where they're not needed or where they're not supposed to, in order to allow me to glue the body down without making a mess out of everything. So what I did was I tucked all the wires inside the hull and made sure that they're sitting and they're not getting pinched between the upper and lower halves. And then I attached the both halves together. I'm holding them together with just a piece of tape here, and I'm hoping that after a while the wires will get a memory of where they're supposed to sit, and they'll stay right in that position. Because if you've ever dealt with a lot of wiring, you know that eventually they'll mold themselves to where they're supposed to be, and they'll just kind of stay there. So I'm hoping that they do gain a memory and sit where they are, and then I won't have any trouble once I take it apart to glue the upper and lower halves together, as I still have to install the engine components that belong on the inside there, and then the top part of the engine here, which goes between the two tail fins, and then there will be the exhaust ports in the back, which I still have to paint. So there's still quite a bit of work to do, but I think all of the electrical work is done, and I think it all worked out. At least I hope it's going to. I am going to leave the nose detachable so that I can pull it off and display the interior. And I did notice that there is a little bit of a sizable seam here between the nose and the rear portion. Now, if I was gluing the nose on permanently, I could get that to close up a little bit more. But since I'm not going to leave it permanent, I'm fine with that little gap, as it'll make it a little easier to take everything apart when I have to. Now, the gap on this side is a little more pronounced, so then I'm going to see if there's anything I can do about that. So, there we go, guys. She's slowly coming together. Alright, guys, and here's a little look at all of the lights, both circuits up and running, and everything functioning exactly the way I hoped. If you can see, the atomic reactor back there just looks really, really cool the way it lights up. All of the lighting on the interior worked out exactly the way I planned. Even the extra lighting that I added at the last minute. So I'm really happy with that. As you can see, all of the different compartments are lighting up, and the shade of lighting is just a little bit different in each one. It just gives it a really cool look. I'm very happy with that. And as far as the jets coming out from underneath the body and the flickering effect, those Evans Design lights just really worked out beautifully. Very happy with that. Now I plan on ordering quite a bit more of his products, as I have yet to see something that I've gotten from him, which I'll admit is not a lot, but it just, everything I've gotten so far just worked out perfectly. Really well engineered. Now that we're done with all of our electrical work and we have the ship ready to go together, the first thing we have to do is install our engine parts. Now, one thing I will criticize this kit for is that there aren't a lot of really positive locating pins or tabs on some of these parts, such as the nuclear reactor really didn't have any way to be held in place, so you did kind of have to glue down the underside of it and just kind of hold it until it grabbed, because on the part of the lower chassis where it connects, where it touches to the body, there really isn't any sort of location pins or anything to hold it in place. So it just kind of sits there. And the only thing that's going to hold it in place is the glue once it dries. Now, with these engine pieces, which look really good, by the way, I mean, it's a really nice casting. I mean, look at how crisp that is. If you guys saw the unboxing of this kit, they really looked, the parts just look really great. I'm really impressed with, especially with the age of this kit and how clean and crisp the molding is. And you guys already know all about the paints, which I'm very happy with the way that came out. Now, what I want to show you is, as far as a locating pin or someplace to, let me see if I can focus on that. You see that little pin right there, little pin, call that a little nub. That is where they use to locate the engine. That pin has to sit between these two, right in this slot of the engine, in order to be located properly. Now, while that does locate the engine and hold and give you a place to put it, there really is nothing to hold this in or to attach this to. No mounting pins or anything. And if you look, it doesn't even sit really well against the inside wall of the nacelle. So there really is nothing to hold this engine in, other than you're going to have to put quite a bit of glue on there just to hold it in place. Luckily, I'm pretty sure we can do that without it being seen. So what I would recommend for that is one of the thicker gel type glues, not the liquid, not the thin cements. So what I'm using for that is my Bob Smith Super Gold, but the thick version of it, not the thin. The thick is signified by the black cap, while the thin is the white cap. So I'm going to be using this to put a couple of globs of it. This also dries clear, which is fantastic for doing windows. This is, next to the Tamiya, one of my favorite glues to use. It's a CA glue, which doesn't fog or cause any damage at all to anything you're putting it on. And I've been using it for quite a while, for windows, for everything pretty much. And it works really well. So anyway, that is the location of the forward part of the engine. Now for the rear part of the engine, again, there is really nothing to hold it in its place. No locating tabs, no pins, nothing. It just kind of lays there and has to go up against the bulkhead of the nacelle, right there in the same angle at which it's cut. And it just kind of sits there. So that's going to be pretty much the only contact area that you have to glue down. Or at least that I do, because I don't want to put any glue anywhere that can be seen through the ship. Now, if the ship was fully painted, then it really wouldn't be a problem. But then again, if it was fully painted, you wouldn't even see any of this detail because it'd all be covered up. So right now I'm going to try and figure out how to glue this down. and then keep going with this build. It's one of the few criticisms I have of this kit, which is really a fantastic kit, and I recommend... Well, let me not recommend anything right now because I'm not done with it yet. But I'll give my rating at the end of this build. One more word about the positioning of these engines. The first, well, what I wanted to bring up was, you see this tab right here where the arrow is pointing? You have to make sure that when you put this engine in, that tab does not overlap the edge of the bulkhead here. Let me see if I can show you that. Which is really easy to do. If it sits right there on the inner edge of the bulkhead, when you try to join the ship together, it's never going to go together right. Even though that looks like it's actually a tab, that a little flange that's made to be glued down, it's not. So you definitely have to make sure that it's sitting right there so that you're not blocking any of the contact areas between the upper and lower half of the ship. Alright guys, we are just like totally stuck on this engine right now. And I just found something else that I'm not crazy about. Well, actually I noticed this before, but it's just bugging me more now, so I'm going to do something about it. Now you see the engine sits in a nacelle, and if you put it on its locating pin here, and you put this one in its place here, we have this big gap here, which normally wouldn't be a big deal if the ship was painted, but this time it is. So I decided to make a filler piece for that to cover that gap up. And what I did was I made this piece here, which on its own doesn't really look like much. Basically, I just used a round piece of sprue that I had lying around. I cut a small section of it, notched it out there so that it would go around the top little pin there of the leg here. Then I cut some smaller sprue pieces and smaller rod here and some sheet styrene, and I added a few details to it just to try and make it look like it's more than just a piece of styrene shoved in between the two engine parts. And once I install it, once I don't drop it, I can install it right here over the pin and put the engine in its place. They sandwich it in between them, and it becomes another part of the engine. Once it's painted up, it should look pretty good in there. Once it's painted and everything is seated properly where it belongs, it should look pretty good in there, and it'll be one continuous engine going all the way to the back. I am much happier with that. So now we got to get to the paint booth, paint this up, and then we're going to start finally putting the body together. But that's going to be for the next video, so stay tuned, guys. You're going to see this thing finally come together in one cohesive unit, and it's going to be cool. After I paint this, we're going to have one complete engine going all the way from front to back. That's going to look really great. I might make another filler piece for the front here. Haven't decided yet. But I'm really happy with the way this is turning out. So I'm going to end it right here, guys. So stay tuned for the next episode. This is where it's going to get really, really exciting as we put the whole thing together. So come on back now, and I'll see you on the next one.